Hi, I'm Steve, and I don't have kids, and I don't want kids, and I'm not going to have kids. I even went to a doctor a few years ago and had him sever the ducts that transport sperm out of my testes so that I would have the lowest possible chance of ever impregnating someone. And then I made a little skit about it because I thought it was funny. If you know me, you know I don't have kids and don't want kids. I don't normally lead with it. I don't normally feel the need to mention it at all. It's just a thing about me. I only bring it up here because Donald Trump and the Republican Party, in a show of truly brilliant political strategy, have chosen to nominate as their vice presidential candidate a man, J.D. Vance, with a history of insulting childless people and insisting that people like him who have children are better and deserve a higher class of citizenship. In a series of speeches, podcast appearances, and other interviews dating back at least to 2019, Vance has attacked people without children, particularly those in what he has called the leadership class, calling them childless sociopaths and insisting they, or we, I guess I should say, have no direct stake in the country. Additionally, in a 2021 fundraising email during his U.S. Senate campaign, Vance wrote, quote, "Our country is basically run by childless Democrats who are miserable in their own lives and want to make the rest of the country miserable too." But Vance's most infamous swipe at people without children was the one he took in 2021 on Tucker Carlson's show. That's Tucker Carlson's Fox News show. The one he had before he became such an undeniable mask-off racist and fascist that even Fox News didn't want to employ him anymore, which is why now he's hosting a show on Twitter. Anyway, Vance was a guest on Carlson's Fox News show, and he said, quote, "We are effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too." Sounds familiar. Vance went on to name examples of the childless cat ladies he was talking about: Vice President Kamala Harris, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and strangest of all, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, who may or may not own a cat, I don't know, but who I am pretty sure is not a lady by any accepted definition. Why would he call Pete Buttigieg a cat lady? Oh, I know, homophobia. Pete Buttigieg is gay, so Vance is insulting him by calling him a woman. Misogyny too, because what self-respecting man, gay or hetero, would want to be called a woman, right? Though in J.D. Vance's defense, I do think it's possible that his misogyny has been overstated. According to a rumor I heard, it's not that J.D. Vance hates women, it's just that he misunderstood what it meant to be an intersectional feminist. The childless cat lady line has gotten the most attention, but personally, I'm the most interested in something he said in a speech he gave in 2021, where he said, referring to people who have children, quote, "When you go to the polls in this country, you should have more power, more of an ability to speak your voice in our democratic republic than people who don't have kids." How did J.D. Vance propose we give more electoral power to parents? Quote, "Let's give votes to all the children in this country, and let's give control over votes to the parents in this country," he said. So a few thoughts about all of that. First, here's the thing that everyone needs to keep in mind about other people who don't have children. It's none of your goddamn business. No matter what age they are, no matter if they're in a relationship or single, no matter if they're hetero or gay, trans or cis, a woman or a man or an NB, no matter if they're your child or grandchild or cousin or sibling or best friend, if another person doesn't have children, it's not your business. It has nothing to do with you, and unless a childless person asks for your opinion or your advice on the matter, keep your fucking mouth shut about it. Because as a general rule, what you think doesn't matter. Now, specifically regarding J.D. Vance's assorted statements, he says he wants to give votes to children, but let the parents control and cast those votes. That's not giving votes to children. That's giving extra votes to parents. You want to give votes to children, advocate for lowering the voting age so that children can actually vote. There's a movie about that from 1968 called Wild in the Streets. Congress lowers the voting age in the United States to 14, and the kids all get together and elect a rock star president. It's a little uneven, but it has one of the funniest endings ever. I digress. Vance thinks parents deserve more of a vote in democracy than childless people because people without children don't have any skin in the game, as it were. We have no stake in the future of the country. This doesn't tell us anything about childless people, but it tells us a hell of a lot about J.D. Vance. It tells us that he doesn't care about anyone outside of his circle, and he assumes that no one else does either. How else could he say something so obviously false as childless people have no stake in the country? What you're really saying when you say that is the only reason you care about the country is because you have children who are going to have to live in it after you're gone. And I'm not saying that's a bad reason to care about what the future of the country is like. I'm just saying, assuming that's the only reason anyone could ever have for caring about the future of the country makes you an asshole. What Vance is also saying, implicitly, is that he sees his children primarily as extensions of him. And that's why he cares about the future. Not because of his children as individuals, but because of him and what he sees as his legacy. How do I know that? Because I also know that to J.D. Vance, non-biological parents don't count. He calls Kamala Harris a childless cat lady. Kamala Harris is not childless. Kamala Harris has 2 stepchildren, the biological children of her husband, Doug Emhoff, and his first wife, Kirsten. Kamala Harris and Doug Emhoff have been married for 10 years. Kamala Harris has been a stepmom for 10 years. Kamala Harris was a stepmom when J.D. Vance called her a childless cat lady 3 years ago. What else am I to think but that, to J.D. Vance, step-parents aren't really parents? And if step-parents aren't really parents, I guess that means adopted parents aren't really parents either. Your children are only really your children if they're your biological offspring. Because the most important thing is the bloodline. And if you're not perpetuating the bloodline, you're not doing your part to secure a future for our civilization. I only need 2 words to describe that. Nazi shit. The truth is, people without biological children, like Kamala Harris, and people without children, period, like me, do have a stake in this country. That stake isn't anchored in a biological imperative or white supremacy or any other race ideology. It's anchored in empathy, in concern for other people, for our communities, for our societies, for the current and future state of humanity as a whole. I want this country, and bigger than that, this planet, to be a freer, kinder, more just, more peaceful, more sustainable place to live, not just for me and the people I personally know and care about, but for everybody. I want it because I'm a humanist, but more basically than that, because I'm a human. And I want my fellow humans to have the opportunity to live their lives to the fullest, to be happy and healthy, to do the things they love and to be who they are. I'm sure if I had children, I would also want those things for them, and I would do whatever I could to help my children have lives like that. But if I needed children, specifically biological children, before I could bring myself to give a shit about my country and the people who live in it, then I really would be the sort of sociopathic narcissist J.D. Vance thinks I am because I don't have kids. People I know who have had children tell me that becoming a parent changes you. I believe them. I've seen the changes in some of them. I've seen how the arrival of their child refocused their lives, resorted their priorities. There was a new center to their world, something that did not exist before, but was now the most important thing they could imagine. The transformation can be profound, and I do not mean to diminish that or to deny the important roles that parents and children play in our society. But what I do deny is that being a parent automatically makes you a better person than someone who doesn't have children. What I do deny is that being a parent should entitle you to more political power than people who aren't parents. I'm 44 years old, and I'm a man, so the "when are you going to have kids" thing is bullshit I thankfully don't have to deal with on a personal basis. Even so, being spoken to as though I'm incomplete or less than because I've chosen to not have children, is something I wouldn't tolerate from my family or my closest friends. And I'll be goddamned if I'm going to tolerate it from some fake hillbilly fascist social climber like J.D. Vance. This is a man who believes that if you don't have children, or have only stepchildren or adopted children, that you don't have a stake in this country and don't deserve an equal voice in deciding its future. On November 5th, he's going to hear our voice and find out just how much of a stake we do have when Kamala Harris defeats Donald Trump and leaves J.D. Vance a loser to be consoled on his tear-stained couch. At least I think those are tear stains.